Let's begin what's trending here in Nigeria with a story that we did begin the day with. But let's recap as President Bola Ahmed Tinubu returned to the country on Tuesday after attending the Joint Arab-Islamic Summit in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Now, the summit, which was hosted by King Salman and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman on Monday, focused on current issues in the Middle East. President Tinubu, during the summit, had called for a ceasefire in Gaza and said that Nigeria is in support of a two-state solution. The president arrived at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport around 8 p.m. and was received by his chief of staff, Femi Gbajabiamila, FCT Minister Nyesom Wike, and other ministers and security heads. All right, well, let's take a tweet from Bayo Onanuga concerning the president's arrival. As he said, the Saudi Crown Prince praises Nigeria's ongoing reforms, assures of support. The Saudi Crown Prince and Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia, Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, has assured Nigeria of support in its economic reform programs. The assurance came when the Crown Prince and President Bola Ahmed Tinubu met on Monday in Riyadh on the sidelines of the Joint Arab-Islamic Summit. The two leaders explored potential areas for cooperation, particularly oil and gas, agriculture, infrastructure, and the constitution of the Saudi-Nigeria Business Council. Nigeria wants an agreement with the Saudi government over a proposed $5 billion bilateral trade facility between the two countries. So, of course, we did talk about this in great detail at the beginning of the show. We looked at all the various aspects, the diplomatic and the economic aspects of it. Rufai?
I mean, on the diplomatic aspect, yes, a lot of people around the world have touted a two-state solution. But like I said yesterday, the practicality of that, I doubt currently, because you cannot expect an Israel that already has a lot of oomph and taking initiative in the war and decimated Gaza to now leave those grounds, you know, for others. As long as they have America behind them and Israel has that might, then they'll never go back. Just like Israel had the might during the Arab Wars of '67, and they took the Golan Heights, they took, you know, Gaza Strip, and they went ahead to take West Bank from Jordan. The question here is, I am a little ambivalent about Nigeria's relationship with this joint Arab-Islamic, you know, liaison communication, because Nigeria is a secular state. And I have problems with that. But I do not have problems with some of their resolutions as regards the push for a two-state solution, as regards, you know, stopping the genocide that's killed over for 3,000 people, as regards, you know, restoring humanitarian conditions and, you know, trying to get Israel off this demonization of UNRWA, which is doing a very good job, like I said, because Israel tries as much as possible to demonize UNRWA by saying they're not doing a good job, they're a terrorist organization themselves, and they're attacking UNRWA. But all UNRWA is providing, they're providing aid to the people in Palestine and to stop all of the, you know, negativity and the bombing that's going up in northern Gaza. And also to de-escalate tensions in the new war frontiers of Lebanon. You all know that to a large extent, Israel and Lebanon have been going at it for a while through the Golan Heights areas and the Sheba farms over these years. Even after the fight in the early 2000s, what they just did a little bit was to move out of Lebanon. The Israelis moved out of Lebanon, but they still occupied areas around the Sheba farms. So that's that. But as regards trade, yes, pretty much we are going to ask them for $5 billion. Because over the years we have not saved. We have eaten our future today. The other day, when we were in Saudi Arabia, we understood that Saudi has in investment all over the world $960 billion. That's what the PIF says.
Public Investment Fund.
Recently, Salak has gotten about 33% of all Greek. In fact, the shares did jump for Olam Agri in Singapore. In fact, I just even got another story on Yahoo Finance that was talking about that Salik want to up that to about 4 billion, the total valuation of Olam, to be able to take bigger stakes in Olam. The conversation is still on. So yes, they are doing trade with us here, but we are going to look for money from them in this something called trade facility, because to a large extent over the years we have not done well. As at over 10 years ago, when Saudi GDP was about 700-800 billion, we are about 500 billion then. If we are continuing to grow then, at least we should be close to $1 trillion GDP. But we have retrogressed. Most of the money in the Ezra crude account, we squandered it. So we are a nation that doesn't think. Hopefully, if we diversify, we will be able to make some quick buck and be able to show up our own revenue base. So the question is, are we going to learn from all of this? Time will tell.
Are we going to learn? You know, when we had a conversation earlier, Rotis, and also during your business segment, you brought in the projection that, you know, some are projecting that oil will be at $40 next year. We spoke about Saudi's Vision 2030 and how they're working to ensure that they can diversify their economy beyond oil dependency. You were obviously in Saudi just a couple of weeks ago. If you had to set an agenda based off of what you learned there, what would you say that we need to prioritize on our agenda with regards to diversifying out of oil?
I think you know our ongoing debates. You have to give room for fiscal space, because this thing all comes, as before I said, we're going there looking for money, right? And so it's either you raise taxes or you cut spending. So, again, I know the fuel subsidy situation has been controversial and so on in the timing, but we've had to free up the fiscal space to give us the amount of money that you can now put into other ventures that diversify your economy away from oil. So I think what the government is doing now is on the right path. The only issue, as Rufai has pointed out, we've had some difficulties along the way, but it should be remembered, we've had 2 recessions, right? Under Buhari, there was 2016, and then unfortunately COVID of 2020. So I think that the pathway that's being put forward now, President Tinubu has traveled all over the world trying to set deals in India, Saudi Arabia, and so on and so forth. It's now up to the ministers to keep going forward. We're talking about mining a moment ago and the potentials there. So Nigeria has to make more money from other avenues outside of oil in order to get this diversification on its path. But real quick, on this Israel-Gaza situation, again, I point to the fact that other parties are saying that the two folks are not negotiating in good faith. Again, just to remind everybody, deadly attack from Hamas on October the 7th, and there are still many Israelis that have been captured, that are kidnapped. Israel responded with a lot of firepower. People, they've been threatened death on both sides. 2025, this resolution for peace really has to be put on the table and has to be solved. And if we're not making any headway now, don't see how we're going to make any headway in the early parts of next year.
Yeah, peace in the Middle East, it's a number of, and I always say it's a couple of doctorates that you have to do to be able to package all of the issues. But let's move on to another story, and we bring the conversation here at home, where patients and families of the University College Hospital in Ibadan, Oyo State, took to the streets on Monday to protest the hospital's prolonged electricity and water shortages. The demonstration was sparked by a 17-day power outage caused by the Ibadan Electricity Distribution Company's disconnection due to unpaid bills. The hospital's essential services have been severely impacted, with surgeries, diagnostic tests, and critical medical procedures grinding to a halt.
People are in pain. People are breathing in pain. People are dying in the world. No electricity, no light. Kilo there. And I joke on my management. If you have issues, lay it down on the table. Stop killing people here. That's so different to the plight of the patient. And people are just dying. Because you can protect your own relation when they come here. You think it's right for you. See how the old day. The management there, their teeth, and lower back. And lower back, that's go every time you implement. I have pressure that's not there to
sometimes when we talk about Band A electricity, it almost sounds like we're cracking jokes about it, but these are real, like, as we can see, it's now a life or death issue where I believe Luth was also, one of the hospitals that is also struggling to pay these electricity tariffs. That's when they even get the electricity supply.
Look, didn't we just have a member of the MCDA over in Azikiwe University where he was talking about the issues that the medical sector is facing there? The Oyo State just happens to be one of the 6 that the Electricity Regulatory Commission has now recognized that can now regulate their own power. But we had KPMG on the Global Business Report earlier this week talking about the issues arising with decentralizing the grid and allowing each of these states to be able to regulate things. But again, Vimbayo and Rufai, the path to getting there is the issue. You're going to continue to see these issues until each of the states can get a tender, get investors that can come in, invest in their infrastructure there for them to be able to, generate their own power and then regulate it. But it costs money. These are painful. These Band A things, the partial removal of electricity subsidies is supposed to be able to entice an investor from outside of Nigeria to say, okay, I'm going to go into Oyo State, I'm going to invest in infrastructure in Ibadan there, and I expect to get a return on my investment. So and unfortunately, these are the pains that you go through while you are going through reform. So it'll get better in the long run. I commend Oyo State from being one of the 6 now that has been recognized to be able to regulate their electricity. But the key thing now is to be able to get investments into the state, improve the infrastructure, and then be able to, the value chain has to be able to pay for itself, essentially. So this is just one of the growing pains, unfortunately, and I feel the pain that they're going through there in the state as well.
So electricity now a life or death matter.
So a couple of things. When we decided to go on this wild goose chase of liberalizing, deregulating the electricity sector, about 2010, 2013, when that process was completed, one would have thought that by now you should have most of the electricity companies quoted on our stock exchange. Why is that not happening? Number one, the business environment. Don't forget that most of the people that even bought these discos in the first place couldn't run them. There are some discos that are now run by the banks. That the banks have to take over. Secondly, the business climate. Problems like the metering system. Problems like vandalization. And other sundry problems in the ecosystem. So, when we look at this, it makes the electricity sector almost not viable. But my pain is that now you are punishing people in that ecosystem. Because even the so-called people that are saying, okay, they are paying the cost-effective tariff in Band A are not even seeing the megawatt hours of electricity. And what are the problems? Number one, you're not producing enough. Where is the Siemens deal today? The grid keeps collapsing. So even if you're on Band A and the day the grid collapses, forget it. And that's why you see they are complaining 17 days. But on the flip side of the thought process for me is, why are paramount institutions like this do not even have their own power production units? UA has been there since 1952. Have the creme de la creme. This was the same hospital that was the 5th best in the Commonwealth in the 70s in this country. The Saudi royal family used to come and get their health care from here. You had the likes of the Lambos in this hospital. Lambo finally became the deputy director of the World Health Organization. So what has been the investment over the years in places like this? Then go back to the power sector. See, if it took Bangladesh and Egypt some years to be able to add their megawatt, why is it that since 1985, Nigeria has been hovering around 4,000 megawatts? 1985. Next year, can you do the maths? So there's a systemic long-term problem that even the privatization has not been able to solve.
Well, real quick, you mentioned the stock exchange. This is where you give a shout out to Femi Otedola and Geregu Power listing.
Apart
you
from
give a shout out to Tony Elumelu, Transcorp Power listing.
Yeah.
So again,
apart from those two,
right,
which are outliers.
But
where are they?
You just, it's going to take time. That's the thing. I get you.
Those investments need to be made. I was reading about how Western Australia yesterday is now generating 2,000 megawatts of electricity from solar. Just from
if you talk about Australia, Rio Tinto, let's not go back to mining. But the ministers, again, we've the Minister of Mining and Steel, also the Minister of Power, I hope he's seeing what's happening. The ministers got to step up.
They need to step up. But as we're talking about ministers and other members of government stepping up, in a historic move, the Abia State government on Tuesday unveiled a groundbreaking policy of free education for all students in the state, despite their state of origin. So the students will receive complimentary education from primary 1 to junior secondary school 3 in public schools effective from January 2025. The Commissioner for Information, Prince Otti Kanu, disclosed this while briefing the press after the State Executive Council meeting. He said that parents and guardians who flouted the new policy would face prosecution. The policy, according to him, is pursuant to the quest by the Governor Alex Otti-led administration to deliver quality and affordable education to the state. This is a brilliant move, welcome development. These are the types of initiatives we're always talking about, especially with the conversation around subsidy and how we're now allegedly making a saving from subsidy. We want to see and know where that money is being invested. That's on a federal level, but on a subnational level, education, can never ever overemphasize the importance of education and access to education.
Connect everything now. Abia State's 2023 IGR, I think Abia is in 25th place out of 36 states. I think they did about 23 billion. 15 billion of that came from taxes, and the remaining 8 billion for Abia states came from revenue from their own ministries, departments, and agencies. So 3 billion increase in IGR for Abia State from 2022 to 2023. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because see, this is how this works. Now, connect all the dots. You devalue the currency. The oil that you sell, this is in Nigeria, in dollars, you bring in more naira. So now you see that what comes in from FAC now is higher to share between the states and the federal government. So now an Abia state now has more money to be able to announce that you want to do free education. You can do free education as long as you have the money to pay for it, because this is something we talked about with the medical services. Medical services are expensive. Education is expensive. Yesterday, we're talking about Donald Trump wanting to scrap the U.S. Department of Education in America because he says they're spending about $90 billion a year. I think the last budget was $72 billion in America for education. So education is expensive. Teachers have to be paid more. So if you want to improve your education proficiency, you want to get more young entrepreneurs that will start the businesses of the Googles and the Geregus and the Transcorps of tomorrow, this is where you invest. So it's about money, and I commend Abia State for pushing on, going on this path.
So I commend Abia State, but also my part of the argument is this so-called money that we have excess of, that FAC is sharing, when you convert it to dollar terms, it means nothing because you have devalued. So I don't think it's a knock-on effect. I just think it's a personal commitment of Alex Otti. But if you are going to do it well. I mean, on the primary level, most of those government schools are practically near free. But one person that has effectively done it is Chief Obafemi Awolowo. And when you go and look at the thesis about the free education, he spent 1/3 of his budget. So it's not just about announcing it. What is the implementation? At first, primary school enrollment rates has dropped tremendously in this country. Is this free education scheme in Abia going to incentivize the growth of primary school enrollment? See, I digress a bit. In 1959, when they were to present manifesto for all the political parties, Awolowo was about only the person, and the action group was about the only political party that can enunciate with empirical facts how much growth in academic numbers and the policies and the knock-on effect on those policies, because he was very thorough about it. So it was not just free education for the sake of announcement, it was free and quality education. I still meet some people that tell you that if not for Obafemi Awolowo, I will be nothing. In fact, a very good example was Professor Tomori, the COVID czar, our own Dr. Fauci, like we say here, was on a rise one day, and he almost burst out crying emotionally. And he said, my parents were just a farmer in the village. If not for Awolowo's free education, I will never get anywhere to go today. So it's not just free education, but sustainable education. I think what Alex Otti should also do is to set up an endowment model around the Abia State free education to be sustainable. There are many Abians that are billionaires that are building big houses in Harare and a couple of parts of Aba. If they are putting money into a pot and they see how this money is being deployed to schools to a large extent, then it makes a lot of Abians in diaspora want to invest in the primary education because that's a fundamental. So apart from just saying, okay, this is government line item, for transparency, you can also set up an endowment pool where Abians want to say, okay, we're investing in the future of the education sector in Abia.
And a quick shout out to Governor Mba of Enugu State, because he's doing that. They're trying to get diasporans to invest in Enugu. So that's a very good point.
It's a great model. And then, of course, there's also feeding that needs to go into that.
Thank you. That is a very strong point.
To incentivize them to come.
If you don't have food in your stomach, you can't learn.
Yeah, you can't learn.
All right, well, we're not going to take a look at what's happening in the rest of Africa as we head over to Uganda, where 2 TikTokers have been remanded to prison for allegedly insulting the country's president, the First Lady, and their son on social media. 21-year-old David Sengozi and 28-year-old Isaiah Sekagiri were accused of hate speech and spreading malicious information. Prosecutors allege that they posted content to degrade the First family and affiliated musicians. One of the accused posted a video in April using explicit language to criticize the First family. The incident follows a police warning that criticizing the president is punishable. Both TikTokers have denied the charges in court. I'm not sure how you deny a video that's on TikTok. They have the evidence, it's there. You live in a country where you know you're not allowed to insult your president. So what do you think?
Yeah, come on now, it's free speech now. Look,
M7.
See, go on our YouTube and see what people say about their leaders. I mean, you're free to say what you want, right? That's free speech. And I've never liked the Ugandan president. First of all, how old is he? 100? I mean, the man has been in power for however long. He's suppressed the rights of his people. He's jailed folks. And this is, look, when you do this to the youth, what happens? They vote with their feet and they leave. So, you know, if he knows what's good for him and the future of Uganda, which is part of the ECA, that's the East African conglomerate where they're all trading with each other with Kenya, Tanzania, and so on. If he knows what's good for him, you want to allow free speech and your youth to thrive because the future of your country, you know, is on it. But let people say what they want. People are supposed to be free to speak.
Museveni is one of Africa's longest serving presidents. I don't think he cares because he does know how to hold on to power. Yeah. His son in question, who is General Muhoozi, is pitted to be the successor, the next president. So it's a family dynasty. So freedom of, they would say freedom of speech, but possibly no freedom after speech.
Right.
But they draw the line. You can say all you like to say, but we draw the line at politics and insulting the First family.
It speaks volumes because it's not only Uganda that applies to. There are many countries that stifle freedom of speech. But is it good? No. You must have a society where you have a level of free, no, not even a level, free speech, but also responsible speech. There is nothing wrong in criticizing our leaders. But what do you expect from a Yoweri Museveni? And what do you expect from an average Ugandan that's had a Stockholm syndrome all these years? Before Yoweri Museveni, do you know where they were coming from? Idi Amin Dada. That stifled them. That was a cannibal in nature. I mean, you can just, for more learning on Idi Amin, you can watch, albeit fiction, but you can watch Last King of Scotland. Albeit fiction. That's what I said. I put a caveat there. Truth has to.
Horrible man.
But a horrible man. Yeah. And this Yoweri Museveni were the freedom fighters then, and they wanted to liberate Uganda. Now, Uganda has been given to them, but guess what? It's no longer for the Ugandan people. Most of the reforms that Idi Amin made has been upturned. And there's no leeway in the Ugandan economy. The prospects of the Ugandan people are getting poorer by the day. So rather than develop the Ugandans, he will develop his pockets, and his son probably, it's only heaven that will stop his son from taking over. That's the kind of it. But is it not happening in Nigeria?
Family business.
Have they not putting some people's sons in positions in some places? So you will serve father and son in this country if you are not careful.